Aloha, it's your boy Neglected Gundam, and today we'll be looking at the HGAC Altron Gundam. Now this is still a build video, so stick around for the build footage. However, we are going to start this video a little different today. We will be comparing the HGAC Altron Gundam with the no-grade Altron Gundam from the year 2000. And without further ado, let's get started. First, I want to say welcome back to my channel. I'm happy to have you here today. Let's go ahead and look at the Altron Gundam that has been all snapped up, fresh out of the box, no panel line or paint. But for sake of this quick comparison, let's go ahead and throw some paint on it. Okay, that's better. Now let's throw it in a pose that resembles the no-grade Altron. And now we are ready for that comparison. I'm pretty excited about this one. Right off the bat, you will notice that it seems a bit smaller, and the proportions just seem wrong. It's funny because the head height is actually taller, but the squashed proportions and the oversized head just make it seem smaller. I'm glad that Bandai gave this suit the HGAC treatment because I wasn't particularly excited about the Altron Gundam while watching the show, but after building this dude, I love it. The proportions are spot on, and the gimmicks of the dragon fangs make it fun to play around with. If you want to see how I made this no-grade Altron, I do have a video showcasing that. I went ahead and added some height to it by adding claw plate. It's a very interesting video. I recommend that you go check it out. But today we will be looking at the paint job for the HGAC Altron. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing you can see me doing is starting with Mr. Finishing Surfacer 1500 Gray for Mr. Hobby. I did a 50-50 split of surfacer and thinner to get the desired mix. That was the base that I started with, then I did a black from Tamiya. Ultimately, I'm starting with this process for this project because I did not have a glossy black primer. But I started this project off in this way with the black base coat because these pieces will be the metallic inner frame. For my next project, I'll be starting off with a glossy black primer from Green Stuff World, and I'm really excited to see how that works. For those of you who have been around my channel long enough, you know that when I paint metallics in this manner, I call it forced shading. The reason I do this is because when you're painting a metallic color, you're going to want a black base coat. And because we already have that black base coat, we don't need to do pre-shading. I'm just going to go ahead and put the colors in where I need them. And that's why I call it forced shading. Next up is deciding which color primer I want for the rest of the pieces. The main armor pieces I went with a gray, and the yellow I went with white. This is the Liquid Surface Primer G from Tamiya. It's the first time I'm using this product and I really like it. I used it with a Tamiya lacquer thinner in a 50-50 mix, and when sprayed it has a nice consistency and it lays flat on the piece. I will be using it again. One thing I realize with making Gundam projects is that there's always an uh-oh moment or why didn't I do this first moment. Once the primer was applied to the entire project, I was ready for pre-shading and I was pretty happy to do it. But then I realized while looking at some pieces that they were actually supposed to be metallic. For example, underneath the shield and also underneath the skirt armor as well. It's not such a big deal because I was already going to be doing the pre-shading with black anyways. However, that just meant I'd have to go back and redo the gunmetal. I find that with every project, you just have something like that takes place. Just try to remember to have a cool head and continue doing what you're doing. As I was painting these pieces black in preparation for the camera jewels, I had a cool idea where I thought the different colors on the shoulder pauldrons could be camera jewels themselves, similar to the camera jewels of the Shenlong. I thought this idea was too cool to pass up. So there's not much to say about pre-shading. There are a lot of tutorials online that will show you how to do it. I'm just going to leave this footage in the video as this is the next step in the process. For this video, I thought it was pretty important to leave all the footage in the order that I shot it, and that way you get a proper perspective of how to build and paint the Gundam from start to finish. Next up is going to be the process of painting the camera jewels. This is the same process as if you were going to give something a candy paint job. This is a very cool effect for the colors, as when the light hits the piece just right, you're going to get that metallic shine underneath the colors. It's really cool. and when used for eyes or camera jewels, it really gives a cool glowing effect. And since I don't use LED lights in my projects, well, that's a pretty cool effect that it can make the eyes shine like that. I decided to let this portion of the video play out so you can see how many drops I used to acquire each color. In many of my previous videos, I realized that I did not properly document how to get the color of the thruster bells, so I've decided to showcase my technique on how I get the effect, and I'm also going to give you the reasoning of why I make it look like this. So as you just saw, I pick a color and I spray the inside at an angle so I can get kind of two tones of color on the inside. In this instance, I went with white. If you follow my technique, you won't even need to mask the thruster, because we're going to start with the inside and then we're going to spray the outside at an angle. For the wing project, I'm mostly going with a two-tone color split, copper and then gold leaf. Once that's been applied, I'm going to go ahead and mist on gunmetal over top of it just to make it look more like a thruster. And just like that, no masking is needed and we are done with the thrusters. I went with white on the inside for this project because when the mobile suit is standing, that could just be the color inside the thruster, but when it's up on the stand, then it might look like it's burning hot. This is the first project I've ever used for white on the inside of the thrusters, and I like it a lot, so I'm going to stay with that theme for the rest of my Gundam Wing project. So you'll notice here with the yellow pieces, I have a white primer and a black pre-shade. I did not want to go with a pink base coat because that would make this color a little too warm for this project. I wanted this yellow to remain cold, but I still wanted it to be vibrant, so that's why I used lemon yellow, and I toned it down a bit with the white. The next step in this project I didn't record, that's going to be adding the glossy top coat. That's the first time I'm adding it, and it's going to be for panel lining. I love using these panel line markers when there's no defined groove for the paint to flow in. This makes the process pretty easy, and if you keep the panel line marker where it should be, there's really not much cleanup. I love using these foil stickers for masking. They work so well. They save so much time because they're the exact shape you need. Just make sure to press them down, that way the paint doesn't get underneath them, and it gives you a clean distinction between the colors. Okay. Always take the tip out because you don't want to just put the tool down and drag it to the side. That could damage the tip. Look this over and see. Yep, looks good. I have said it before and I will say it again. When doing a base coat for a piece that's going to be red, I like to use pink. It makes that red very vibrant when it's done. And doing a second base coat once you've already done a piece that had to be masked is also a plus because it gets rid of that first color that was masked. Now it is time for another application of pre-shading. and I feel like I just can't get away from that process in this project. But as Gundam modelers, we do what we need to do. With every process of making Gundam models, it feels like it's 2 steps forwards and 1 step back. But just keep in mind, even if you make a mistake, it's all steps forward. So the end of the project will come soon enough. Now this color here is what I call the bread and butter of this build. I went ahead and painstakingly made this color. If you guys use Tamiya, you can use my drop count here and get this exact color. Just a quick note here, you'll notice that I did not mask this piece. Underneath it does have the metallic inner frame. You'll notice the gator clip holding this piece up. When spraying that piece, make sure the spray does not hit that gator clip and then bounce back underneath the piece. That's very important as well. That just takes a little bit of practice and know-how of where to spray. At first, I was a little nervous to make this color, but then you know what? I just did it, and I think it came out very well. I really enjoy it. I like it a lot. I think it turned out just the way that I wanted it to, and then at the end of this project, I put a matte top coat on it, and it really makes this color look great. For this pauldron piece, I went ahead and included the entire process, so you'll see from start to finish all the coats that I use, and then the blending of the black pre-shade at the end. There's actually a lot of footage I end up cutting, and you don't get to see the whole process, but this piece I wanted you guys to. For any color that you end up painting, you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that the first coat is pretty thin. It's not going to look complete when it's done, but I set those pieces aside and let them dry while I do the rest of that color set, and then I'll go back one by one and give it another coat. Usually you only need 2 coats, but if you need to, you can do a third. And then of course don't forget the process of blending if you have the pre-shading. There's no real particular reason as to why I chose the red pieces to tell you this. That's just a general rule, and you're getting that knowledge now. Just as a little side note, you're going to see what happens when you put paint on a little too thick. Yeah, no spoilers, but yeah, this is foreshadowing for the rest of this video. Okay, so when it comes to the white, you guys may know from watching my past videos that I like to pretty much cover up my pre-shading a lot with white. However, in this project, I did want it to stand out a little bit more, so that was the focus on, especially the wings, was that I wanted that pre-shade to really stick out a little bit more. So that's what I focused on in this project. Normally, I do like that pre-shading to be covered up pretty well and it to be very subtle, but in this project, I just wanted that to stick out a little bit more. However, one thing I will say with the white is when I take pictures of my projects, I do have a light that is directly underneath them. And when you take pictures, the white has a hard time capturing that pre-shade. So right off the bat, my pictures dole that out and make it look almost white as well. So that's kind of one thing you get when you have a light underneath your project and you're taking pictures. When it comes to hand painting, you're going to want to make sure to do multiple coats. You're not going to be able to get it in the first pass. And if you can, congratulations, you found out the miracle process. But from my understanding is you're going to want to put on very thin coats, let it dry, and then continue to put on thin coats. If you were to put a coat on, not let it dry, and then try to put more paint on in that same spot, well, the brush is just going to take that paint away and it's just going to be a bare spot, and then the paint will be uneven as well. I find that when you're doing white for hand brushing, white is such a hard color to thin. It's either too thick or too thin, and it likes to run everywhere. So even if you are applying any paint to a piece that you're doing hand painting for, you don't have to worry too much if you go into the other part of the piece. If you can't perfectly edge it right, that's fine, because when you panel line, you can cover your mistake up, as long as that mistake is not too far away from the original piece that you're painting. This is a perfect example of that, as you can see the paint looks a little rough where those two colors meet. And when all is said and done, this is going to look really nice. One thing that I find when I use the markers for panel lining is if you make a mistake, you're going to want to clean it up right away. You cannot let these markers dry. It is very easy when they're wet to reverse that mistake. However, when they dry, it's near impossible. And voila, just like that, this piece is done and it looks great. I love using these stickers for masking, but I find that when you remove them, you want to be super careful because they are fitted so well and sometimes they're in recessed areas that you're gonna have to just really concentrate so you don't scratch the paint underneath. And speaking of the paint underneath, you're gonna see that it is still glossy. So this metallic color here under the shield, all the inner frame, I left very glossy. And then all the paint on the armor, that's going to have a matte top coat. Okay, so there's a bit of a problem with this piece. If you can see right here, when I was putting this chest piece on over the cockpit hatch, I scratched the paint. So then I tried to fix it by just painting it red. And it's a little shiny right now because I don't have the matte top coat on like the rest of it, so it doesn't look the same. But because of that little chip right there, I don't like that. So I'm gonna try my best to take this guy apart and repaint this cockpit hatch. It sucks, but it's gotta be done. And of course I'm worried about scratching, you know, the rest of the paint job, you know. I'm worried about that. That's not fun. And that's the reason I didn't want to do this, but I need to because that's just so annoying. And that's one reason why this project has taken a long time, because it's just sitting on my shelf while I have not been wanting to do this. Take it apart. So this project's been sitting on my shelf for so long that I guess maybe the heat got to it. I'm not really sure. I don't know, but I know that the top coat was put on a little too thick. So let me see if I can see this again. Okay, you see the cracks there? It's a good sign that your top coat was put on a little too thick, and when it dried, it went ahead and cracked there. So I could easily just leave this in the project, but I don't want to do that, especially since this is something I will probably more than likely be selling. So I definitely don't want that type of defect in, you know, my model. So I'm gonna go through and find all the pieces where they are cracked like that. I'm going to set them aside. I am going to OxyClean them, and then I am going to repaint them. So now I'm going to go through my project of the Altron of the white pieces, and I'm going to see just what I have to redo. I don't want to redo a lot, but I will. Alright, these are the pieces that need to be OxyCleaned. The pieces that are not going to be fun are going to be the leg pieces here and here, because I'm gonna have to redo the hand painting on them. That kind of sucks, but you know, it is what it is. This is what I have to do, is OxyClean. So this is a lot of the project that I don't want to have to repeat, but you know, I will because I'm a freak. So yeah, I just want it to be right. I don't want cracks in the armor because I sprayed too much top coat on. That's not something that I want to look at, especially after spending so much time on these projects anyways. I may as well just spend a little more time on them and make them right. Speaking of making it right, I'm not going to waste your time and make you watch me repaint all these pieces. You've already seen me do it in the past. It's pretty much the same process, and it comes out the same way. So that big old mistake is on me. You guys aren't going to pay for it. That being said, I just want to inform you guys, when you're watching me panel line with these markers, that is not the only thing that I used for this project. Since my top coat is acrylic, I went ahead and made a panel line wash solution, and that's going to be enamel paint with enamel thinner. And that is for the more defined grooves and panel lines. You just don't get to see it because I didn't record any of that footage. If you have painted your model and you are assembling either the Altron or the Shenlong, I recommend installing the cockpit hatch in this way. To avoid a paint scratch, you're going to want to angle it down and then snap the chest piece together. This will save you a lot of trouble in the long run. I found that when I was snapping it together the first time, I applied pressure to the cockpit hatch, which then in turn scraped the underside of the chest armor, and that's what caused that scratch. So try to avoid that at all costs. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you for watching the entire video. I really hope you got something out of it. I hope it gave you motivation and inspiration to build your projects. That being said, I just want to give you a life update on what's going on in my life because it feels like I haven't uploaded a video in a long time. In fact, it's been about 5 months. And the reason for that is because I just recently got a new job back in March, and I have really been focused on doing a good job there. And that has pretty much put a halt on my Gundam building until just recently I found a rhythm to where I could work hard and then come home and do Gundam stuff at the same time. So right now I'm kind of juggling the new job and also continuing my Gundam projects. So I do apologize, I haven't done much this year. Usually I do more projects than this. However, like I said, this new job, I'm really focusing on it and trying to do a good job there. So thank you for your patience. And as always, I want to say, if you like my work, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, as I do have a lot of Gundam projects to do in the future. If you like this video, go ahead and press that like button. If you want to comment, I will go ahead and comment back to you. And until next time, I hope you don't feel that neglected now.